Welcome to Kevin and Brian's Horror Bulletin podcast, recorded live in the catacombs, where each week we cover the latest horror news, shorts, a classic Universal horror, and 2 creature feature reviews.
This week, after the news, we'll cover the Universal Studios movie Dracula from 1931, the contemporary The Poughkeepsie Tapes from 2007, discussion of the short film Vexed, and the modern horror film Hellfest from 2018.
Turn up the volume and lean in close. Here we go. And first, the news. It's getting closer, just like the creature who wants his toe back. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is taking tangible shape with a brand new teaser trailer. Based on the book series of the same name, published from 1981 to 1991, it looks like we're promised some real scares and unsettling images. I didn't know that it was published for 10 years.
I've never read any of them.
I have here and there, and I didn't realize it was a 10-year period.
I always hear about little kids that were scared half to death from them, but by the time they came out, I was a little too old for it.
Mm-hmm.
And just like Goosebumps, I never read much of the Goosebumps books either.
Yeah, I didn't either.
A little after my time.
Yeah. You don't just read the books, claims one of the protagonists, a terror-stricken teen. The book reads you. Join us at theaters August 9th of this year when it opens. And we've got a link to the trailer and the official website.
I thought it was coming out sooner than that. I keep hearing about it, and August is a ways off yet.
They're plugging it.
Yeah,
plugging it good.
It'll be big.
Uh-huh.
Well, second up, it's been 40 years since the ball first chased people down for the tall man. Boy. March 28, 2019 marked the anniversary of the horror film Phantasm. In fact, the director made all the sequels as well, except for the most recent 5th one, Ravager, which he only produced. In celebration, Well Go Entertainment is releasing a Blu-ray set of the complete film series this fall with a new 4K restoration of Phantasm II, loads of extras, music, and a full-scale replica of the Sentinel Sphere.
A working replica that'll fly through the air with blades popping out of it.
I'll
I
buy
can't
one.
wait.
I'd buy a couple of those. Well, no exact release date is set yet. They promise it to be available by Halloween.
You betcha.
I love that movie. That's one of my favorites.
Absolutely.
The 5th one, not so great.
The first 2 were my favorites. And then after that, less so, but still good.
Yeah, we saw all 5 of them about a year ago, and I think that last one was just one too many.
I saw the first one when it came out.
Yep.
Yeah.
So the first
not
2
that
when
I'm
they
old
came
or
out.
anything. Yeah.
40 years?
I was 13.
I think we're admitting something there.
40 years. I was 13 when it came out. Yeah. And up next, the friendly folks at Warner Brothers have just released the first trailer for Annabelle Comes Home. The Conjuring universe, launched by James Wan in 2013, continues to expand. This is the 3rd spin-off, featuring the evil doll Annabelle. And all 3 movies are written by Gary Dauberman, and this is the first he will be directing.
A powerhouse trio of Vera Farmiga, McKenna Grace, and Patrick Wilson will star. Look for Annabelle Comes Home in U.S. theaters June 28th.
We need to catch up on the Conjuring universe.
Annabelle Comes Home. That sounds like a great children's film.
Oh, yeah, soothing and happy. Yeah.
And at the end, they all come home and they get a big hug, and it's all good and happy.
Yeah, definitely.
Bet it's not like that.
She's an evil little doll.
You know, in 2 years, I got to see Annabelle versus Chucky.
They've got to do that.
They got to do that.
They gotta, yes. And who do you root for? It's like Freddy versus Jason. Who do you root for?
Everybody's got their favorite. If you're looking for royal quality, limited edition books, literary art, and prints, Suntup Editions might be a place to go. Their latest upcoming title isn't strictly horror. It's The Road by Cormac McCarthy, which is to be released this fall and can be ordered April 13th. But they have had multiple Stephen King works, as well as Rosemary's Baby, Horns, and The Haunting of Hill House, most of which are past and out of print. It's interesting to look through their site and dream, even if you don't order a copy of The Road, for $1,695.
Yes, you heard that number right.
Almost $1,700. Or a less limited edition copy for $395. And there's no decimal points in $395.
That's $395.
For the cheap edition.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it still sounds cool, though.
It's a very cool sight to just look at, and yeah, super duper quality, but $1,700. Boy, that's a lot for a book.
What did you think of The Road?
I
Not typically considered a
liked it
horror
a
movie,
lot.
but it kind of edges in that territory a little bit.
Yeah, it's some. I don't know. I almost consider it more science fiction than horror,
But it's really not.
because you don't ever know what happened.
Yeah,
what caused it?
The man and the boy walk through the post-apocalyptic wilderness. Somebody got something burned to the earth, and there's bad people on the road. Not sci-fi, not really horror, but
Somewhere
kind of
in
both.
between.
Yeah.
Yeah. I liked the book. I liked the movie.
I like both. Yeah, I
Yeah.
did both also.
Mm-hmm.
People complain about Cormac McCarthy's writing, but I didn't think the Road book was any big deal.
You know what I found was, in general, if I see the movie and then read his books, I enjoy it more. I've tried it the other way around, read the book first and then see the movie.
They're just not
And
that good by themselves.
I enjoy seeing the movie first, and then, I don't know, it fills in somehow on his books. But that's just me.
Yeah, some books and movies are like that,
Mm-hmm.
which we'll probably talk about in a little bit. Last thing, if you can't wait for Stranger Things Season 3 to fill your needs this 4th of July, you can give yourself a little taste now with Suspicious Minds. Touted as the first official Stranger Things book title, author Gwenda Bond gives us a prequel to the series, detailing the origins of the lab, Dr. Martin Brenner, and where 11 really came from. Available as an ebook, paperback, hardcover, and audio, they got you covered. And of course, we'll link to it in the show notes.
Sounds good. I'd read that.
Did you get it yet?
I haven't got it yet,
But you will.
but I bet I will.
And that's the news. So, speaking of books that have translated into movies
And translated into movies multiple times.
multiple times.
Yeah.
Did you ever read Dracula?
I did.
What'd you think?
I thought it was interesting how Dracula is almost a minor character in the book.
He never gets a point of view and everybody else does.
Yeah,
It'd be like Game of Thrones with no Jon Snow.
he's kind of this secondary monster that's out there.
Yep, he's there, he's out wandering around, and yeah, it's everybody else's reactions to him in the book.
It's different than the movies.
I don't remember when the book was written, 1890s or something like that. It's quite old, written in the style of letters, but it still holds up pretty well. It's not a hard read, unlike some things from that time period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely holds up. I'd recommend it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the original book.
And the original movie, starring Bela Lugosi, actually follows that plot pretty closely.
1931, except that there's a lot more Dracula in it.
Yeah.
It's Bela Lugosi, and he's got lines and everything.
I am Dracula. I bid you welcome.
Famous quotes.
Okay, this is our first Universal monster movie that has sound.
Still black and white, but they've got sound now.
1931, black and white, directed by Todd Browning, written by Bram Stoker and other people, starring Bela Lugosi, Helen Chandler, and David Manners. 75 minutes, and I don't know about all the copies, but the one we saw, the video looked really good, but the audio was kind of awful.
Yeah, it was. It was staticky and hissy.
Part of that was that the director did not believe in background music. There were a few places in the story where they were at the opera and places like that where music was playing.
He didn't think that audiences would understand background music.
Where's that music coming from? They're out in the swamp.
Now we just think of that as, a common thing, but back then,
Sound was new, and they
Sound
didn't
was new,
completely didn't
and
understand it.
yeah, exactly. The music needed to have an actual source for audiences to understand what it meant. So they didn't, yeah.
It was still a choice,
Mm-hmm.
which today it's noticeable because a lot of the action, there's just no sound, people tiptoeing around the room, and it's just quiet. But of course, since the film is so old, there's a lot of old hissing sounds. And a lot of it sounds like, I don't know, it's like it's raining.
Well, I think some of it, too, was noises that got picked up
Yeah.
that you don't hear in modern movies. Maybe they had microphones on the floor even at times, because you
Possibly.
could hear footsteps. And
So the video is really good. The audio, I'm not really sure if it's always been that bad or if it's degraded over time. But it's totally acceptable to watch.
Listen to them. Children of the night. What music they make.
Well, if you've ever read Dracula, this is pretty close. It also matches up with a lot of the more recent versions I've seen. Which versions have you seen that are pretty close? It's got bits of the Coppola version, the Gary Oldman one.
that's what I was just going to
It's
suggest.
got bits of the Frank Langella one.
Yeah. Well, the basic
They've all
gist-
borrowed from it.
Yeah, they start in Transylvania, and Dracula relocates to England.
Yeah.
And then he meets and falls in love and obsesses and goes from there.
Now,
The basic gist is
Yeah.
that in each of these versions.
this one starts out, it's got a lot more of Renfield in it than most of the stories. He's the one that goes to the castle and gets Dracula to sign the contract for Carfax Abbey. He comes home on the ship with Dracula, and he goes insane and winds up in the asylum.
Ends up being Dracula's henchman.
In many of the versions, and I believe the original book, he went there first and just sort of disappeared. Then later, Jonathan Harker went to finish the contract. And that's when he first runs up with the three vampire women.
Keanu Reeves did that in the Oldman version.
And I think that's the way it went in the book also.
Yes, yeah.
In this original version, Renfield goes, he takes care of all the business, and Jonathan Harker never leaves England. He's more of a side character almost.
And then there's been different spins on the story too. I saw one stage version where Renfield actually turns on Dracula, and he's the one that kills Dracula. And that doesn't happen in the movies normally, or didn't happen in the book. Dracula ends up killing Renfield, is how it normally goes, yeah. But speaking of plays, I didn't know that Bela Lugosi was in a stage version before the movie was made. Starting in October of 1927, 261 performances.
And from the sound of the trivia that I read, he was really desperate to get this movie role.
And he took a paltry salary.
$500 a week.
Which wasn't enough for a starring role back then. An insulting number was what some people have referred to it as. But he wanted it. He got it. And, yeah.
Okay, so we're probably not going to go into the plot too much on this one. Should we?
Nah.
Go read the book or watch the movie. This is definitely entertaining to watch. It's nowhere near as drawn out or long as The Phantom of the Opera or The Hunchback.
I thought it ended quickly. It went quickly, and it reached the end. As what is done already? Yeah.
There's a really good scene in it where Van Helsing and Dracula confront each other. They both know who the other one are, and they're like, "You can't kill me. You can't kill me." And Dracula
They're both
starts to hypnotize Van Helsing, and Van Helsing breaks free. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of tame by today's vampire battles, but it was pretty good for this.
Mm-hmm. And Van Helsing knows the mirror trick and shocks Dracula by producing a little mirror in a box. And,
The mirror and the cross and the wolfsbane. They don't mention
wolfsbane.
garlic.
Yeah, not garlic. Wolfsbane repels vampires. And there was no sign of fangs. He didn't have fangs. They did mention 2 bite marks on the necks.
It's very clear that there were bite marks, and you see him leaning in to bite the girl, but you don't actually see any fangs. Maybe they just didn't know how to do that as a special effect.
And you see him start to lean in to bite Renfield, too.
But Renfield dies off screen.
Which is kind of a funny story. No, when he's initially taking him on. The studio apparently had some issue. They thought that was too homoerotic for Dracula to actually attack Renfield. They were really opposed to including that at all.
Dracula only eats women. Anything else would be gay.
Too homoerotic. So reluctantly they included it, but you can tell a difference. It's much more he's kind of starting to approach, and then they cut.
Yeah, you don't see that.
But he does take a taste of Renfield, and that gets Renfield hooked, and he becomes between that and hypnosis, Renfield is Dracula's slave.
Okay, so I thought as far as the acting goes, Dracula was okay. He was suitably alien and mysterious and foreign and exotic.
Very well dressed, but really a slob as far as living quarters.
One old castle in Transylvania and another old castle in London.
Just ruins that he lives in.
Yeah, not a nice place.
And it's such a contrast that he's so sharp dressed in his tuxes and capes all the time.
And he sleeps in that tux too.
Yeah, he does.
Renfield and Van Helsing kind of steal the show with their over-the-top performances. Dracula doesn't say much, but he's creepy in every scene.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody else is kind of forgettable.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Renfield. Is that you?
Did you ever see Dracula Dead and Loving It with Leslie Nielsen?
Yeah, I did.
I always thought it was an Artie Johnson thing. But
No.
it came from this.
It was a reference to this, yeah.
Okay, well.
Anyway, we enjoyed it. Thumbs up. Classic.
If you like the classics, you got to see it. If you like vampires, you got to see it. So, now for one that maybe is a little less good, we're going to talk about the Poughkeepsie Tapes from 2007.
Mm-hmm.
Directed by John Eric Dowdle, written by Drew Dowdle, and stars Stacy Chbosky, Ben Mesmer, and Samantha Robson. And this is a sort of, not a found footage, more of a documentary.
They're interviewing, in a documentary style, various people. And then they're interlacing it with the footage from the VHS tapes that they found and news footage at the time.
Yeah, the FBI guy says they found 2,400 hours worth of videotapes of this sicko torturing and killing people back in the 1990s. And the entire movie is basically them interviewing FBI profilers about how this guy got his start and what he was thinking and what he was like.
Who his first victims were, how he developed and became more sophisticated, how he managed to trick the police and how they closed in on him and found him, and, documentary.
We watch him claim his first victim, a little girl on the side of the road. And this is all done through the video camera. We don't ever actually see the guy. It's all just, he's saved everything on his tapes. And the first one was kind of amateurish and looked that way, really bad quality. And then we start to watch as he gets better at it. He gets a little more professional and starts planning things more. And clearly this guy is really good at planning ahead.
The only time we do see him, there's one bit of footage where they got all the surveillance tapes from all the gas stations where they knew he would have had to stop somewhere along this one route. And he's standing there with one hand covering his face and the other hand signing. And he's signing a clue of a location where bodies are hidden before he even killed those people. So he really planned ahead.
He knew the camera was going to be watching him.
And he knew the police were going to
So he
find
told
that
the police
footage.
where he was going to put the body. Yeah, really thinking ahead.
So he's smart and evil, but was there anything new in this movie?
The rest of the movie basically switched back and forth from the FBI being interviewed to more footage from the killer's video camera, and the tapes tell the whole story. We're treated to a mix of modern photography, horrible quality VHS camera work, unfocused images, and underlit scenery. It's all very authentic looking. Unfortunately, I thought the grainy video quality goes on for way too long and it gets kind of distracting.
A little bit.
It's a lot like watching an hour-long bad videotape. And I've seen videotapes that look a lot better than this, so there was sort of an effect.
And it was sort of an exaggerated effect, because I kept thinking, boy, I know that the
Videotapes
camera
didn't
technology
look that bad.
was, in the late 90s, but it wasn't that bad.
So it's kind of realist, other than the bad VHS simulation. It's very realistic, almost too real. Too real is not a good thing. The serial killer doesn't do anything we haven't seen before.
I see you've made that same note that I
He's
did.
really smart, always staying one step ahead of the law, but otherwise it feels just like any other real true crime documentary.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a horror movie. It does feel like a real crime
Yeah,
documentary.
it's too real. It's all fictitious, but it doesn't show us anything we haven't seen in real documentaries. If you've ever watched a real true crime documentary, you'd at least learn something. This is the same thing, only it's all fake.
Yeah,
What's
exactly.
the point? What
Yeah.
was the point of making this?
I'm not sure. Yeah. It wasn't scary like a traditional. I mean, creepy and unsettling, certainly. Some horrible imagery, and he kills children and it brutalizes some of his victims.
You get a
and-
movie like Saw, and they kill the people in unique and interesting and fun ways. This is a serial killer. He kills people with a knife or a rock. It's just not that interesting.
Yeah, I didn't think it was. So it wasn't badly made. I think the production quality was fine. The acting was convincing, realistic, but I only give it like a 3 maybe.
I'll go with a 4. Didn't go to sleep during it, but
No,
it
I didn't either.
was not great.
Yeah. We did watch a short film.
Vexed from 2018. Directed by Mark Cartwright, starring Baker Chase Powell, Nosheen Phoenix, and the monster was Alex Deal. I looked up his Instagram, and it's The Real Deal is his Instagram
If you
post.
got a name like that, you might as well use it.
It's
Yeah.
13 minutes long, so it's one of the longer ones. And in this one, a young couple talk about horror movies and how bad most of them are.
Well,
Are we opening the
having-
door to a problem
having
here?
just watched the Poughkeepsie Tapes.
Yeah, things go pretty normally for date night TV until the guy starts seeing his girlfriend in more than one place at a time, which is odd, but he doesn't put too much into it. Then they start hearing noises in the other room in the middle of the night. Someone strange is in the house. Where do they come from? Where did they go? Are they even real? What'd you think?
I liked it. I liked it a lot
I thought it was good.
because you don't know what's real and what's fake and what's imaginary and what he's dreaming and what he's,
Not quite sure when it's over until the words come up.
Mm-hmm.
It's another one of the stories that has a beginning, middle, and end. Both the actors do a good job in the sets, and hypothetically, if there are creatures, the creatures are entertaining.
And it's a very wet film. Not a bloody kind of wet, kind of an inky black liquid.
How do you
sort
know
of
that's
wet.
not blood? Could be black blood,
Oh, it could be monster blood.
monster blood, yeah.
Yeah.
Or it could be chocolate. It's hard to tell.
Look too dark for that. But anyway, good one.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
Yeah, link in the show notes. We'll get you there. And that one's just called Vexed.
And then we watched a 2018 horror movie, Hellfest.
Director is Gregory Plotkin, written by Seth Sherwood and Blair Butler, and this stars Amy Forsyth, Cynthia Mercado, and Stephen Conroy. And it's also credits Tony Todd for the minute or so that he's in it.
He does some voice work and about a minute on stage, yeah.
Candyman is getting old.
He probably got paid a lot for that, though.
Yeah, he's the only recognizable name,
Mm-hmm.
and that alone, his name alone, does sell people on a horror movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so the premise of this movie is, what would it be like to go to a haunted theme park where someone was really trying to kill you?
And by theme park, we mean like the big ones, like think Kings Island, Six Flags, for instance, Six Flags, where it was filmed a lot.
You know, at Halloween time when they have the
big-
entire park turned into a
Yeah,
Halloween
the big
theme.
amusement parks where they do this in a big way. Many people in costume, big budget special effects, mazes and attractions that you walk through and ride through.
Yeah, for years and years we go to the local haunted house in Dayton, and it was no big thing. I mean, it was a haunted house. And then one year we went to Kings Island for the
Much bigger
Halloween
deal.
haunt.
Mm-hmm.
Big, lots of things. And this movie is a lot like that. I started to wonder if it was filmed there. But it wasn't. It was filmed at a Six Flags.
But it's on that scale. But yeah, so imagine that scenario. There's a real killer there.
So it starts off as a group of girls go visit one of these attractions. One girl splits off from the others and meets a serial killer dressed in a costume. And he stabs her and drags her body off.
That's the credits.
And that was about 30 seconds of screen time right there. So then we get into the real characters of the movie. 6 20-somethings all go to the same Halloween theme park.
A year later, the next Halloween.
The characters are kind of typical for this kind of movie. They're young, they're attractive, and they're completely expendable. Lots of people running around in monster suits and haunted house attractions. One of the girls watches as a guy stabs another girl in one attraction. It looks very real, and she's kind of suspicious.
Looks really, really real
Well,
for a reason.
We know that it is, but she's not so sure.
Mm-hmm.
But then the killer starts to follow her all around the park. Then they all decide to go to the Deadlands, the scariest part of the park, where they can actually touch you. And most of these kind of parks, they're not allowed to touch you. That's really one of the main rules.
That's pretty universal in all of them that I know of.
Well, there are
some
there are
extreme
attractions
ones.
like this that will touch you, but usually not these big, open to the public kinds.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of these attractions look like real amusement park type characters. If you ever been to one of these kind of places, you'll recognize a lot of the gimmicks and tricks. Most of this was filmed on location at a real park, which probably made it fairly cheap to make.
Well, they probably had to pay them a pretty hefty fee to rent it and film at it.
So you used to work at one of these places. You worked at the one at Kings Island.
I worked there briefly.
Yeah.
I didn't enjoy the attraction that I was working in. We weren't supposed to touch the people, but I got touched in a bad way.
How many times did you get punched?
Well, a gal swung her bag. I don't think it was a malicious thing. She was farting around. She swung a bag with something heavy in it, hit me in the corner of the eye, gave me a black eye. So I went home for the night, and the boss said, take the weekend off, and we'll see you next weekend. And went to the doctor to have my eye checked out to make sure there wasn't any road damage. There wasn't, fortunately, but it bruised pretty good, and I had a little bit of blurry vision for the week. And then next weekend I make it back, and I'm doing my thing again. And where I was, it was kind of an open area. It was one of the boulevards, and we were in costume, just mingling and interacting with crowds and crowds of people. And I was down at the one end at one point by myself, and half a dozen young guys kind of start milling around me and giving me a little bit of a hard time, and I'm bantering back with them in character, and I kind of saw it coming. One of them got behind me, and another one got in front of me and shoved me. And so I saw it coming, and I was able to roll. I fell backwards and didn't get hurt, and they took off running. And at that point, I realized I'm not having that much fun doing this. I'm done. I went and I talked to the boss, and I said, I'm sorry, but this isn't for me. She was understanding, but twice, no, I don't want to be touched and knocked over by the clients.
When I brought this up, I thought you'd tell us what it was like to work in one of these places. Preparation and stuff, not the true horror of Halloween Haunt. Yeah, I remember going around there. Those guys with the sparklers on the ground, they would swoop down real low and their hands would spark. They had that in the movie, and they did that in real life.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the same kind of creatures hanging on the wall and the mazes and stuff.
It was the preparation and rehearsal and the teamwork of it was a lot of fun. In theory, it was fun.
As long as you're
fun
not
to
getting
do.
beat up,
As
it'd
long
be
as
a
you're
lot
not
of
getting
fun.
beat up by the customers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and one of the guys, he got slugged. He was in character and saw a guy and a kid and did his rawr, and the kid just absolutely was horrified, terrified. The dad punched the worker. I mean, like literally slugged him.
So what you're saying is the true horror here is with the actors.
And security was involved with that one. That guy, he got escorted from the park. But these, it's not always a safe place to work for the workers.
So more real life injuries than happened in this whole movie, almost.
Almost.
So what'd you think about the movie?
Predictable. A little slow. I mean, the haunt stuff was cool to watch, but it kind of went on and on with not much happening for a long time. The guy was stalking them, yeah. And usually the formula in these is the people get picked off one or two at a time. And there wasn't enough picking off to make it satisfying as far as a slasher. And I all in all, yeah.
I find it amazing how often you and I agree on these. We need to find some more movies we can argue about.
It's not enough debate.
Here's what I've got. I like how they take completely fake Halloween haunt attractions and make it genuinely creepy. The soundtrack is decent, and I thought it had pretty good pacing. I wasn't that bored. But overall, the plot is extremely predictable, the characters are the usual stereotypes, and everything goes exactly as you expect. It's completely by the numbers, but if you like these haunt-type events, you'll enjoy watching this. So,
We're pretty much on track.
predictable.
Yeah, predictable. Is
There's
something
a
we both
group
have
of
in
young
common there.
people. They pick them off one by one, and at the end, there's just one or two survivors, and it's exactly who you think it's going to be.
But there was a long stretch, I thought, far too long, where there was no
Where nobody
picking.
died?
There was no picking off. In the slasher film fan
Well, the
in
whole
me.
point of that long period where nobody dies is to make you care about the characters.
Except they were kind of predictable characters that I didn't care that much about. I was kind of rooting for the one couple, especially.
I think it was a lot like Cloverfield. You know, where that whole first hour when it's nothing but the party, you're supposed to get to like these characters that you know most of them are going to die anyway.
Yeah,
I didn't like any of those people in that movie.
I did in that one.
These people weren't particularly hateful, but they weren't interesting either. And then we get back to poor old Tony Todd. The horror icon Tony Todd's voice work can be heard coming through the park's loudspeakers at various points throughout the movie, but he only appears on screen in one scene, as a carnival barker running a guillotine act.
And he reminded me, I don't remember what they called him at Kings Island, but there was like
Master of Ceremonies?
a host,
Yeah.
Master of Ceremonies. That's basically what Tony Todd was. Kings Island did that too. There was one guy
Yeah.
who was, and he was voiceover for a lot of things, and they'd do a stage thing where he would host it too. And that was Tony Todd's character.
But he got wheeled out in a chair like he was ruling the place, and then he stood up and did a little bit with a cane, and then he reached down and picked up this person's fake head. I wonder if he's doing all right health-wise, because he did not move around hardly at all.
Now that you mention it, he didn't, did he?
No?
Could be something going on there. He is 64, but
I thought he
that's
was
not-
older than that.
That's not that old.
But he's a big guy, and big guys aren't real healthy at, older ages.
Sometimes,
It's it's something like 7 feet tall or close to it.
He's a big
He's
fella.
big.
Yeah.
What is that I see over the horizon?
It's the sun. The sun's coming up.
The vampires are starting to shuffle back in for the day.
I bid you welcome.
We need to get going so they have a place to sleep.
Yeah, give them some privacy.
Yeah, they don't like it when we sit on the coffins all day long.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. Stop in during the week at horrorbulletin.com for news and horror updates, to comment on this podcast, or to contact us. Check out our Twitter feed at @horrorbulletin, and check out the website. All the reviews are there in writing, and they're pretty good, if I do say so myself.
Because you wrote them?
I did.
Yeah, he's good. They are really good. So, we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. This is Kevin.
And this is Brian,
I am Dracula.
and we'll see you next week.
See ya.
Hee 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 hee.